Hey friends, welcome to the Swing My Heart podcast with your hosts, Kristen,
Nicole,
and Hannah. Come join our porch swing conversations.
filled with lots of faith, hope, and heart. Hey Hearties, we're back with another episode, and today we will be recapping season 9, episode 2, Out Like a Lamb.
In this episode, Hope Valley elects a new mayor. Lucas and Elizabeth try to find the little moments in their relationship. Elizabeth offers to help Nathan with his horse after the hit and run, but it's newcomer May Sue who connects with Newton.
I love that synopsis. It's a great way to describe this episode.
Yes, definitely. Very intriguing. There's a lot that happens in this episode.
A lot going on. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So do we just want to get right into it with the start of the episode?
I mean, yeah. I feel like, especially after the cliffhanger last week, this episode just gets right into it.
Yep. So Laura, she stops by Elizabeth's to watch little Jack for the day. He's just starting breakfast. And then, we see Lucas drive by in his car to tell Elizabeth that there has been an accident involving Nathan. The look on her face just broke my heart.
I know. Ugh. And at this point, she doesn't know how badly. She doesn't know anything. And I feel like what a way to start your morning too. I mean, she's just getting on with her day. Laura just got there first. Well, first of all, before we start talking about, what happened, I really like seeing Laura, because it's been a while since we've seen her, watching little Jack. Because I feel like since season 8, even at the end of season 8, she wasn't in the last episode, and it was Robert who was taking care of little Jack. So it's been a little while since we've seen Laura taking care of Jack. So it was really nice to see her right off the bat. She's back taking care of him. And so that was a sweet little scene to see before we see, Lucas come and, drop this bomb on Elizabeth that something happened to Nathan. So
yeah, I loved seeing Laura again too. That was great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And then when Lucas got there and just Elizabeth's face, I mean, it was very sweet of Lucas to come and alert Elizabeth as soon as he got. That was nice of him.
Yeah, I agree. Elizabeth and Lucas, they go to the infirmary and they see Rosemary when they first get there. And they start having a conversation with her. She says that Nathan made it through the night, and Faith had said that that's very encouraging. Lucas asked if anyone got a description of the car that hit him. Bill mentions that one witness thought it was a black sedan, and Lucas also says that there must be front end damage to the car.
Mm-hmm. I don't know about you, but I kind of wish this episode would have started right after it happened, maybe just a little bit after, just so we could have seen the events that happened that night after it happened. Because I definitely feel like the way that we were just throwing in all of the incidents the next day. I mean, obviously, I understand because it might have been a lot to show. There would have been a lot of stuff there to show. So maybe that wasn't the best. But personally, I would have loved to see the events that led them to the next day, how kind of getting through that initially when it first happened.
Yeah.
The panic and everything that was going on. Because I mean, it went black once it happened. I mean, understandably so. We don't want to see that. But I just feel like there's a little bit missing there. I wanted to know some of the more details because they're talking about it after the fact, but I want to know how everybody found out, how did everybody, who found Nathan, who, took him to the infirmary, who did all of that stuff.
Yeah.
I really wanted to know that,
Yeah, I did too. Newton was hurt too, unfortunately, which is sad.
Yeah.
Bill says as he approaches Lucas and Elizabeth and Rosemary that he is heading to Jameson to take a look around. There's another man riding to Buxton and another to Benson Hills. Mm-hmm. So I'm guessing that this would be to try and find the suspect of the hit and run.
Yeah. I mean, do you have any ideas who it could be? I don't know. I have no idea. I mean, it's gotta be, I feel like it's gotta be someone who probably, he would have met. I mean, I feel like there's gonna be more to the story and it's gonna be, there's something going on and it's going to turn into something. I don't know who it is though. Like I'm very curious to find out who it is.
I could be wrong, but there are a few photos that have been released by Hallmark from an upcoming episode. I don't remember which one, but there's a man walking through town and Joseph is in one or two of them, and somebody else, I think it's Bill, and they're holding the guy's hands behind his back. So I wonder if that's the person that was involved in the hit and run.
Yeah, now that you mention that, I do remember seeing that photo. I can't remember which episode it was either, but I do remember they are dragging someone away, like they're arresting somebody. And actually, I remember at the time when I saw that, I wondered if that was going to be the person who did the hit and run. So it's very possible. And if so, we haven't seen that guy before, if it's that guy. But I'm sure, suppose like the characters probably knew of him or something. It's going to turn into something else. It's going to be, there's a bigger story here going on, and I'm excited to see where it goes.
I agree. I think it's very possible that it could be the same guy. Lucas tells Bill that he will head to Union City to also look for the suspect. And it was very brief, but did you notice the hand squeeze Lucas gave Elizabeth?
Yeah,
I thought that was really sweet.
Yeah, that was a sweet little moment there.
Yeah. After Lucas leaves, Rosemary tells Elizabeth that Faith said the only people she wants inside the infirmary at the moment are Molly and May Sue.
Mm-hmm.
They turn around and face the infirmary door, just looking inside or looking at the door. And then it cuts to the next scene with Bill. He's walking in the jail or the Mountie office.
Right.
Henry is still in his cell.
Can I just say that, okay, I know that this happened last episode, but could I just say, just seeing Henry in that cell again, just like it's episode and Henry is in the cell. I'm just like, oh, Henry. Yeah. My heart does break for him because I feel like he never gets a break. Something always is happening with that guy. Yes, he's very confusing and he does get himself into this. He does put himself in these situations, but at the same time, he has the right intentions. He's trying to do the right thing. He's trying to start his life over again. He says in this episode later on, and I'm jumping ahead a bit, but he does say that, he can't quite outrun his past. And I just feel so bad for the guy. Like, he's trying and he just keeps getting put in these situations. And yes, he puts himself in the situations most of the time, but he keeps getting put in these situations where, he gets back into these tough situations where he just can't get himself out of it, And so like, it's just seeing him in the cell again at the start of the episode, like, oh man, he's been there all night. Yeah. I'm just the poor guy. Like,
I love how when Bill comes in and tells Henry that Nathan has been hit by an automobile, he immediately stood up and asked how Nathan was doing. The old Henry would not do that, I don't think.
It definitely shows a lot of growth from him. Like I said, like, he really is trying to turn his life around, and to see him like, he's in like a cell, but he did get up and he definitely, you could tell that he definitely cared about what was going on with Nathan. And so, yeah, I definitely appreciated that too, for sure.
Yeah. Henry also asked if it was done on purpose, and Bill wonders the same thing, as we probably all wonder the same thing.
Yeah, definitely. Also, it just makes me think of this. I just thought of this. I don't know if it's relevant. Maybe it just happened to be that there was somebody going by, but there was also a wagon on the road as Nathan
on the road.
It's probably not relevant. It was probably just an innocent bystander. But I also wondered that was an interesting choice to put that wagon there. Like, I mean, it would make sense if like it was a busy road and people are going by. It would make sense, but it just also makes me wonder too, like what was that about too? And maybe the wagon guy's the one who found Nathan. He probably stopped and helped Nathan. He's probably the one who helped Nathan. Actually,
Yeah, you have a good point.
who knows?
I think so too. Elizabeth goes to the infirmary and she's talking to Faith. Faith says that he'll be okay after some time to recover. He's got some external injuries and a badly dislocated shoulder. The good news is that he doesn't seem to have any internal injuries. The most concerning is a brain concussion. He'll need to stay in bed for at least a week. And he asked to see Elizabeth. After this, Faith says that he may have some memory loss, especially about what's happened.
Mm-hmm. I found, okay, knowing what I do now about the scene, I found that conversation to be very interesting because it's definitely one of those things where it was kind of a little misleading. Like they talk about this because they want us to think one way, and then it's kind of another. I mean, understandably that maybe he still could have some, he could still have a little bit of memory loss, but we end up finding out in a few seconds that that is not the case. Anyway, we'll get. But what did you think about when you heard that Nathan wanted to see Elizabeth? Like, what did you think about that?
I don't know. What did you think about it?
I was a little confused. Well, first of all, okay, seeing the trailer, he didn't know who she was. In the trailer, according to the trailer, he said, "Who are you?" And here's Faith saying, "Oh, he wanted to see you," and talking about how he might have some memory loss. But I guess the memory loss part could just apply to the fact that he doesn't remember what happened, the accident.
Yeah.
That's really what she was referring to. Now that I say that, I kind of realize that now. But I think it was very interesting that kind of like told you right there that if he wants to talk to Elizabeth, then of course he knows who Elizabeth is.
Yeah.
But it was definitely interesting to me that he wanted to speak to her.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I know what you mean. Elizabeth, she walks over to Nathan and says that he's had everyone worried. Nathan asks Elizabeth, "Who are you?" Like we just mentioned. And I wrote in my notes, he was just joking. Are you kidding me? That is not funny at all.
I mean, it's kind of also a little bit uncharacteristic of Nathan to be jokey like that. I mean, that's a very Kevin move. That's a Kevin move, not a Nathan move. And I was like, since when does Nathan do that? Like, no. Like that's an Aaron Kevin moment. Like that definitely felt like an Aaron Kevin moment, so much so that like when Aaron posted the behind the scenes from that after the fact, she posted that photo. I like literally commented that you two need to do a comedy together. And she replied back, she was like, "Kevin, like what do you think?" Like kind of so I was like, yeah, you two should do a comedy together because that was definitely like an Aaron and Kevin thing. They would do great at that. But back to the story, it was definitely like Nathan, like, what are you doing?
That's not funny. I think Elizabeth even said that. She was like, "Nathan Grant, that is not funny."
Not funny. I know. And then she's like, "Is this how our relationship is going to be from now on?"
Yeah, she said that in a later scene, which we'll talk about later.
Yeah,
but
right. You're right. Yeah. But no, I mean, it was nice that like he wanted to see her and that he found some humor in the situation. I mean, it is kind of one of those situations. It's not a very humorous situation. Sometimes humor is the best way to handle when something like that happens. So, I mean, I can understand that. Also, I do appreciate that like he was like wanted like to let Elizabeth know that like just please don't like tell Allie about this because I mean, he doesn't want to scare Allie. He wants Allie to have a good time with her grandparents. I mean, if I was Allie, I definitely would want to know that happened. But at the same time, if she doesn't need to know at the moment, then it makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. I was actually about to get to that. And Nathan telling Elizabeth that he doesn't want Allie to know. He wants Elizabeth to check on Newton for him. And then it cuts to the next scene. Elizabeth goes to the stables to see Newton and check on him. Robert and Angela are there too. They say that he doesn't look or sound good. Robert says that Newton has blood on his left hind quarter and that he's favoring that leg a lot. I don't know a lot about vocabulary with horses, but I'm guessing that that's his back leg, or
Yes.
one of his back legs.
Right. Yeah. It was definitely, from what I remember, it was definitely his back left leg. It had a little bit of blood on. And yeah, I mean, poor Newton too. I mean, for a horse, like these type of things can be very traumatic for a horse. I mean, I'm actually surprised that Newton was as calm as he was, even though, when Elizabeth, tried to, go him over and like pet him and get him kind of used to her. He like, he wasn't having any of that, but, he was actually relatively calm compared to what he could have been. I feel like I think that's a good thing. I mean, I'm sure because he is a mounted police horse, he's probably trained to, be calm in situations when stuff like that happens. Because I know in a lot of times when something happens like that to a horse, they just freak out, like totally freak out. And there's like nobody wants to get near the horse. And like, I mean, he definitely, wasn't in the best position. Like, definitely, like Elizabeth would not want to go in there and pet him. But I definitely felt like relatively, like considering what happened in the situation, Newton handled it very well.
I think so too. Yeah, he was very calm compared to some of the horses that we've seen on Heartland, for example.
Right, exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking of too. Is like the horses, like there have been similar situations for anyone who watches Heartland. That there's been a lot of situations in that show where, major accidents happen to a horse, and there's just, once that happens, they do just not want to be touched, and you do not want to go near them because they are crazy.
Yeah. Angela wants to know what will happen to Newton, and Elizabeth promises that they're going to help him. I thought that was really nice of her to, try to encourage Angela, because I'm sure that her and Robert didn't like seeing Newton hurt either.
Yeah, no, definitely not. Can I just say though too that it was really sweet to see how much Robert was, hanging out with Angela in this episode.
Yes.
But that was really, I noticed, I was like, that's interesting. It's sweet.
Yeah. I hope they don't bring Allie into it. We don't need another love triangle. Please no.
I feel like Robert was kind of being more like a big brother to Angela in this episode. Like, as we'll see later, he's definitely, kind of being that big brother and kind of like helping out and stuff, which was very sweet.
Yeah.
But yes, I thought that too, no, please don't do that. No, we don't need that.
The next scene is Lee and Rosemary in their office. Lee is standing at the window, tapping on it, and Rosemary kind of stops him. She's like, Lee, sweetheart, the window, or something like that. Yeah. And she says that she knows he's on edge about the election. Lee mentions that it's not just the election. Rosemary gets up and she says, an accident like Nathan's puts life in perspective, helps you realize what's important, but becoming mayor is important to you. It's all right to feel nervous.
That was a sweet little moment just for like Rosemary was, just trying to comfort him and realizing that, he's nervous. Like that's why he was like doing the tapping, and he's feeling really uneasy, and she was trying to, kind of put him at ease, which is a very sweet little moment there.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a line from Rosemary after that. And then Lee says, as we move forward into the 20th century, it's important that we remember what got us here in the first place. Courage, determination, an eye for our fellow citizens. And Rosemary says, is this your acceptance speech? And Lee says, is it that obvious?
That was a sweet, I liked that moment, especially like I liked what Lee was saying there, because like it just, in that moment, it brought me back like to the early days of What Calls the Heart. Like I just felt like in his words, I just felt like that was like, alluding back to the earlier seasons. And it just made me think like the start of the show, and just like how, everything, all the obstacles everyone had to go through, they all came together. And I love that. I love that Lee was, acknowledging that and talking about the importance of that. And I mean, I definitely would have liked to hear his whole speech. It sounds like it was a good one.
I did too. And we'll talk about his speech, especially that one paragraph a little bit later.
Yes.
But I would have loved for us to hear his speech as well.
Like, tell me more, Lee. Tell me more.
Rosemary tells him that he should go see how things are turning out at the voting booth. So Lee excuses himself and goes down to the mercantile to
Very eagerly, I might say.
yeah,
very
he just runs out of the office. Fiona and Hickham's conversation outside the barber shop. I love this exchange between them. Hickam says, I should go down there. Fiona, I should go down there. Why should you go down there? And then Hickam says he's talking about going down to the mercantile to ask about election results. Fiona is talking about going to the jail to tell Henry she brought in Mr. Smith. I love how when they're saying their first lines, I should go down there, I should go down there. Hickam is looking towards the mercantile and Fiona is looking towards the jail.
Right. It's so funny. I love that was such like a humorous moment there just to see like that they both think that they're talking about the same thing, but yet they're talking about totally separate things. It's just funny, like that banter, like, no, you should, no, I should, you should, I should. Like, it's like one of those like moments that was just so funny. And I thought it was cute that, they were like having that exchange together.
Yeah.
That was funny.
Yeah. And then Hickam says, how about we both just stay here and don't go borrowing trouble?
Oh, Hickam.
And then they sit down at the same time on the bench. That was hilarious.
I know. They're so in sync. It's so funny. Like, those two are so much in sync. It's really funny.
Oh, my goodness. Bill and Henry have another conversation in the jail. Henry asks if there's any news. Bill says that he ran into Jerome Smith on the way home. He has dropped the assault charges against Henry, so he is free to go.
Yes, finally.
Henry sounds surprised, in my opinion.
Yeah. No, he definitely did. He definitely wasn't expecting that at all. Like, that definitely kind of threw him for a loop.
Joseph comes into the jail, and Henry tells him that he can't figure out why Mr. Smith dropped the charges. Joseph thinks that he's forgiven Henry. I think Joseph mentions Henry coming to church on Sunday. Henry tells him that he doesn't attend church because he doesn't want to hear the sermons. He goes on to say after that, if there was anything charitable about Jerome Smith, 47 men from this town would still be alive.
Oh, that was a heavy statement there. Well, first of all, I was a little surprised by how bold he was in saying that he just doesn't want to hear the sermons. I was not expecting that. I mean, obviously, like, I know that, but like, I was not expecting that. And then for him, to add it on, and it's very obvious that that's what's on his mind is, the mine disaster. And like, it's still weighing very heavily on him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's still fresh in his mind, even 9 seasons later.
Yeah. Poor Henry.
I know. After Henry says that, Joseph asks if he blames Mr. Smith or himself for the mine disaster. And then Henry leaves. Yeah. I think as he said something else. I don't have the line written down, but.
Yeah. I mean, that's a loaded question too, but it just goes to show you, Joseph knows how to get to the heart of it and to really, make him think about it. Like,
yeah,
like what's going on here and like, how can you fix this,
Yeah. I love the next scene between Lee and Bill. They're outside the mercantile waiting for the election results and they're pacing back and forth. Yes. And Florence, just kind of is standing at the top of the steps with her arms crossed and she's like, she's like, you're wasting your time.
Yes. I definitely got a little hint of the old Florence there when she was just doing that, because I feel like she definitely mellowed out. She's mellowed out, but like I definitely saw a little bit of the old Florence back there when she was just getting that look like, oh, okay, like you guys.
Lee and Bill, they read the sign that says election results announced when tabulation complete. And they, read it at the same time. And then Florence says, very good.
Yeah.
Like a teacher tells her students.
I know, right? Like, It's definitely funny to see two grown men like Bill and Lee just, act like they were kind of acting like school children in that moment. Just like they're just so impatient. I mean, totally understandable. But it's just funny to see them, especially Bill, like, typical Bill.
Oh. After Florence goes back inside, Bill turns to Lee and he's like, "Game of cards?" And Lee's like, "Yeah, why not?" And then they, walk off to the saloon.
I thought it was cute to see though that I mean, obviously they're friends, they've always been friends, but I just thought it was kind of fun to see them, like, they're gonna play cards together. They're both in the same boat, they're both waiting, they're both running against each other too. That's gotta be weird because they're friends. So like it was kind of a nice moment to see that they decided they're gonna go play cards together.
Yeah, I love that. Faith and May sue outside the infirmary. May asks how Nathan's pupils are. Faith says that they are equal and responsive. May also asks if there's any blurred vision or ringing in the ears. Faith says that Nathan has no idea how lucky he is. After that, May goes on to tell Faith that she wouldn't have finished her apprenticeship under Jeffrey if she didn't know how good she is at this. And then Faith goes back into the infirmary to take care of Nathan.
Once again, more mystery. Like, I mean, I like May, but I'm also like I'm very confused by her. Like her character is very confusing. Like I'm very curious to see where they're gonna go with this because it's like I'm very confused. Like what's going on there behind the scenes? Like obviously she's very good at her job. She's very smart. She's very intelligent. But how did she get that way? And what's up with Jeffrey? Like that's what I want to know.
Yeah, I want to know too. I mean, I don't think she'll turn out to be a villain.
No, definitely not. No, she's very smart, and I think she has good intentions, but I also know that she's not perfect. Obviously, she and I mean even Amanda has said this that she has her flaws, and so I'm curious to see where they're gonna go with that.
I am too. Yeah. Joseph and Minnie in the cafe said this is their first scene there. Joseph comes in and he's trying to take one of the muffins. And then he burns his hands when he does take one of them. And Minnie says, "I did just stay out of the oven."
Yeah.
I feel bad for Joseph that he burned his hands. But at the same time, Minnie did tell him they were hot.
She did. She did tell him. She did.
Minnie asks if he was able to speak to Henry. He tells her that he was, but Henry didn't want to talk. Joseph mentions that he doesn't like it when he can't help. This next line from Minnie is one of my favorites in the episode. She says, "You can only do what you can do. God will take care of the rest."
Mm-hmm. Yes. I love that too. That was definitely one of my favorite quotes of the season so far.
Yeah.
It's so true. Sometimes we can only do so much because, we're not perfect. And so, we can't do everything. And the important thing is that we try our best to do what we can do and we let God handle the rest because, God knows what's best. So it's a good reminder.
Yeah. Joseph says that sometimes he gets impatient with God and Minnie knows that. Then we see that sweet kiss on the cheek from Joseph to Minnie. That was really cute.
Yeah.
I love the Canfields. They're one of my favorite couples in Hope Valley.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're very sweet. I like
Elizabeth and Lucas's conversation on the balcony of the saloon. Elizabeth brings him tea in his new teacup from Hamilton. Her family had a sailboat just like the one on the teacup with red sails and a bell. They called it Safe Harbor. I'm just trying to envision in my head the Thatchers on a boat.
Can you imagine Viola on a boat?
No.
That would be a sight to see.
Although part of me wonders if they took this from the Return to the Canadian West series with Elizabeth and Jarek, which in the book, Jarek was another name for Jack because her family I won't give away too much for any Hardys that haven't read the book, but the Thatchers go on a family trip, and I believe part of it or most of it takes place on a boat.
Interesting. Well, I will say that the book series was based off of this part of this was based off of the TV show, but I do know in the beginning seasons, Elizabeth does talk about how her father, was very big in the shipping industry, especially with the whole storyline with Billy Hamilton. That was a big thing where they talked about that. So it does make sense. So I do kind of like that they are following up with that, 9 seasons later, and they say finally, yes, they did have a ship. They did do a thing. So that is a good little tie back there.
Call back,
yes.
Elizabeth mentions that she enjoyed the air balloon ride. She was impressed with his ability to pilot the balloon. I love this next line from Elizabeth. She says, "You don't always have to make such grand gestures to show that you care." Mm-hmm. And Lucas says, "Small, thoughtful gestures can demonstrate the same sort of admiration, like giving me this teacup." Then Elizabeth walks a little closer to him and she says, "You are a very fast learner." Lucas says, "Well, I have the best teacher," which is really sweet.
Can I say, I've been waiting 3-4 seasons to hear that conversation between the two of them.
I have too. Yeah. I'm glad that they have it.
Yeah, I've been so ready. I mean, our listeners know I was always Team Nathan. So I always had a little bit of a hard time with the grand gestures thing. So it was like, I mean, grand gestures are good, but sometimes, they can be too much. And sometimes, smaller gestures are better. And so I was so ready. I was like, can they just please have this conversation? And so I'm glad that they finally did. I'm glad that Elizabeth brought it up, and I'm glad that Lucas agreed. So it was very nice to hear that. That was definitely a much conversation, and it was a very sweet conversation.
I've been waiting for that conversation as well.
Yes.
After Lucas tells Elizabeth that he has the best teacher, they start to share a kiss, and then Ned interrupts them with the election results that are inconclusive.
Right.
At that,
here we go with the typical Hallmark thing that happens in all the Hallmark movies. They're about to kiss and something interrupts them. Except for this time, it was a Ned and not a phone ringing.
Like, are you kidding me?
I know, and just for it to be the fact that, like, that happens and the results are inconclusive, like, come on. Are you serious? Like, what does that mean?
It also makes me laugh because last season, Ned and Florence were always getting interrupted with their kisses. So I wonder if that was kind of like payback.
Right. Yeah, that is funny because I actually do think it was Elizabeth who came in and interrupted them last season. You're right. That's a good point. Do Lucas and Elizabeth need a bell now?
Oh my gosh. We get another scene of Elizabeth and Lucas walking through town. Lucas has come to walk Elizabeth home, which I thought was really sweet. He says that it could be one of those little moments that he hopes they can keep on sharing. Elizabeth says, "You realize that by pointing out the little moments, you do in fact make them big moments." And then he kisses her hand. Elizabeth is worried he's going to regret getting out of the oil business. She says that he's naturally competitive. She can tell how much he enjoys being an entrepreneur and says that he doesn't have to do it just to make more time for her and Jack. Lucas says that he's been thinking about it for a while and that Henry was right about the oil business being relentless. He mentions that he has other plans, other interests. And I wrote, what could those other plans and interests be? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, for one, definitely, he wants to, get to know little Jack better and spend
Mm-hmm.
more time with him and Elizabeth. We also see him getting into motorcycles this season, getting out some of that adventurous side that he has that we're seeing more of this season. Yeah, I mean, I feel like he just wants more time to do things that he wants to do and not
Mm-hmm.
focus so much on work because I
Yeah.
feel ever since he's came to Home Valley, he's been very work focused and he's been, all about the business and, doing all that stuff. And I feel like he hasn't really, had a lot of time, to focus on other things. And so I think now he's just kind of realizing that now is maybe a good time to just, he's definitely getting to that point where, his priorities, he's realizing where his priorities need to be. And you know what? I really appreciate that. I love seeing that growth in Lucas, that he's able to, put aside some of these other things that he's been doing and to, really prioritize his life better. And he's really starting to realize what's most important. And I think that's really big and it shows a lot of character growth. And for me, like that's something I've been really wanting to see with Lucas. And so I'm really glad that we're starting to see that now. And I think it's sweet too. I'm really glad that Elizabeth brought it up again. Because I feel like it kind of got brushed off after he said it before. Like Lucas was like kind of like brush it aside, like after he said it in the other episode. And so I'm glad Elizabeth brought it back up again to say like, you don't have to do this. And I'm glad that, Lucas was able to say that, no, like, you know what, like I'm doing this for lots of different reasons. And I've been thinking about it for a while. So it was nice to see that moment of honesty between Lucas and Elizabeth.
Yeah, I agree. When Elizabeth said that she's worried he's going to regret getting out of the oil business and that he doesn't have to do that just to make more time for her and Jack, it reminded me of season 2 and the whole problem that she and Jack had with him going to work for her father.
Yeah, I definitely think Elizabeth has, she's definitely learned a lot of lessons from what happened with Jack. And I think, I also think, I mean, it's really nice to see she's at that point in her life where she's able to, be in a good place where she feels like she can allow Lucas to do what he wants to do and not feel like she needs him, to do certain things or she needs him to give up something for her. I think it definitely shows like a little bit of strength there from her that she's able to be like, no, like you don't have to do this if you really don't want to do it. And I also do think like if we're comparing this to like the Jack situation, I also think it's really nice to see that Lucas is at this point where he's willing to, give some of that stuff up to spend more time with her. I feel like that's something we didn't really get a lot with Jack. And I feel like that's something I really would have liked to see is I would have liked to see more of that with Jack. And so I'm glad that they're moving forward with that in this way, that they're showing Lucas growing in that way, because like I felt like before I wasn't really seeing a lot of that from him or from Jack. So like it's really nice to see that.
I agree. Yeah. Although I love Jack, don't get me wrong.
Right. Nothing against Jack there. I just do think that, Jack was very work focused, understandably so, but he was very work focused. And so it's good to see that Lucas has that similar characteristic with Jack, but Lucas is growing and learning to kind of let some of that go. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Jack is, and always will be one of my favorite characters on this show, even though Dan is no longer on the show.
Yes.
The next little moment between Lucas and Elizabeth that I love before it cuts to the next scene, he asks Elizabeth, "So you think I'm competitive?" Elizabeth pauses for a second and she looks at him and she says, "I'll race you to the gas station." And then, she runs off and Lucas follows right behind her. I thought that was really cute.
That was definitely really kind of unexpected.
Yeah.
It kind of tied back to the playfulness of last season when they were on the horse and they're like racing on the horse.
Yeah.
It was definitely interesting, but I do think it's funny how she was just kind of like, yeah, like you're competitive. And he's like, you think I'm competitive? And then she like proves it by like going and like doing that little racing, thing. So yeah, that was kind of funny.
Yeah. I actually wish we could have seen the end of that race and like find out who actually got there first.
Right. Yeah, that would have been funny, definitely.
Robert, Angela, and Cooper talking to May Sue. So they're in the ice cream shop. Robert asks May Sue if she will take a look at Newton, and Angela mentions that he won't let Mrs. Thornton anywhere near him. May wants Robert to watch the shop for her while she goes to see Newton. Robert says, "You're about to learn that I'm always the best choice for the job." That line made me laugh.
Oh, Robert. I feel like he said that last season about the mail too. He said something similar. Very similar.
Did,
yeah, and I'm like, I've heard this before. Robert always thinks he's the best man for the job.
Although he does do a good job.
Right, he does do a good job, but I definitely it's just funny, and I definitely like how a little bit later, Angela humbles him a bit about the whole riding the horse bit.
Minnie comes in the shop to pick up Cooper. She tells him that he promised to come by the cafe to work on his spelling, but he didn't follow up with that.
Mm-hmm.
Angela mentions that she forgot to remind him, but Minnie tells her that that was his responsibility, not on her.
Right. It was so sweet of Angela, though. She's trying to, stand up for her little brother, and she's trying to, help him out there, even though, she probably shouldn't be because, he's not doing the right thing right now. Mm-hmm. But it was a sweet thing to see Angela standing up for her brother and trying to help him out.
Minnie's talk with Cooper outside the ice cream shop. She says, "You know what it means to make a promise and to break a promise." Cooper asks if he has to go to church ever again. That surprised me. I was not expecting that.
I was not expecting that either. And I was really curious why the writers wrote it that way. Like, I just felt like it was very out of the blue, and it kind of shocked me a little bit. I was like, whoa. Like, hold up.
I mean, I can kind of see why they did that, but at the same time, it wasn't something I was expecting.
Well, yeah, I just felt like that moment, the way that they brought it up was a little bit weird. Like, it didn't quite flow to me, but at the same time, I understand, it's very, I completely understand where they're going with it. It was definitely a little shocking in that moment. I was not expecting him to bring that up. I was a little confused, how they got to that point for him to just say it like that. I kind of wanted more. I wanted to hear more, why just right to that question,
Fiona comes into the saloon to talk to Joseph. She wants to know how Henry is doing. Joseph says that it's always complicated with him. Fiona feels like it's her fault that the fight with Jerome and Henry happened. And Joseph says something about her not knowing their past, and then Fiona says that she does know their past. Joseph mentions that he's not the person she should be talking to, and that she needs to go see Henry.
Right. Well, first of all, I think it was very big of Fiona to admit that, because Joseph was under the impression that she didn't know what she did, and the fact that she was just like, no, I actually did know what's going on, and I was like, oh, not. Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We see May Sue in the stables with Newton. Elizabeth sees the interaction, and Newton is very calm around May Sue. I thought that was a really sweet moment between the two of them.
Yeah, that was a really sweet moment. I mean, she's just so she reminded me of Amy.
Yeah.
From Heartland, just how she just completely just totally understood the horse, and I thought that was such a sweet moment. And I thought it was really interesting at that moment that Elizabeth just so happened to be walking by. Mm-hmm. She just goes in and she's just watching May Sue, mm-hmm. and she just is like, okay, I'm just gonna leave now. Like she's got this handled. She's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw a few comments on Twitter about May Sue being called the horse whisperer, which kind of reminded me of Heartland.
Right. Yeah, definitely.
I mean, not in a bad way, of course. It reminded me of how people call Amy that.
Yeah, no, definitely. Definitely. I could see that. Yeah.
The next scene, I feel bad for Nathan. We see that he tried to stand up because he wants to check on Newton, but he fell. And, Faith comes in and she helps him get back in bed. And then Molly comes in and Nathan says it again. He's like, how's Newton? Or, I want to know how Newton is. And Faith says that Elizabeth will report back.
I love the moment. Just Nathan's just thinking about his horse. It just shows how like strong their bond is,
Yeah. Robert and Angela in the ice cream shop. Angela doesn't know how to ride a horse, but would like to learn how.
Right.
Robert says that he knows how and offers to teach her someday.
Right.
I love Angela's line. She says, Opal told me all about you knowing how to ride. Before you teach me, maybe you should take some lessons.
Right.
And Robert says, maybe that's a good idea.
Right. Like I said earlier, she's humbling him a bit because he says that, he can do all this stuff. He's the man for the job. And she's like, maybe you should take some more lessons before you teach somebody how to ride a horse. Like, you might not be as good as you say you are. I love that Angela did that too.
Yeah.
Sweet. Like Angela, that was sweet.
Yeah. Like, let's think back to that scene last season when Elizabeth had to catch him while he was riding the horse.
Right. I know. Oh my goodness, Robert.
This next scene is one of my favorites in the episode. Elizabeth goes to see Henry and they have a conversation in his office. Elizabeth, she's trying to get the door open and it's still stuck. Elizabeth tells Henry that they haven't really spoken since he returned.
Mm-hmm.
He goes on to say that Christopher and Rachel are getting married.
Aww. That's so sweet. I'm happy for them.
Yeah. I kind of would like to see Henry as a grandfather.
That would be interesting. That would be cool. I would pay to see that. That would be cool.
Henry tells Elizabeth that he knows she and Abigail write regularly. Elizabeth says it meant more to her than you'll ever know that you drove out to see her. Just the mention of Abigail.
Oh, finally. I mean, we all had a suspicion that that's who he went to see. And I'm so glad we finally found out that that is indeed who he went to go see. And I know it was so nice to hear that Abigail and Elizabeth still write each other because we haven't heard her talk about Abigail in so long. So that was so nice to hear.
Yeah. I'm still wondering what all the talk of Abigail is going to
lead to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Just with her being on When Hope Calls in Brookfield.
Oh.
Part of me wonders if Henry is going to leave Hope Valley after this season and go to Brookfield.
I mean, they do keep talking about Abigail. It is very interesting, especially since they didn't talk about her for a while. And now all of a sudden they're talking about her again and she shows up in Brookfield. And it's definitely interesting. They're definitely planting seeds for something. I don't think they would bring it up if it wasn't going to lead to something. Although I do have a hard time picturing Henry not being in Hope Valley anymore.
Yeah, I don't want him to leave Hope Valley, but at the same time, it would be cool to see him on When Hope Calls.
It would. And I would love to actually see something happen with him and Abigail. And I think Henry needs Abigail.
I think so too.
Really does.
Another reason I think this is because I think it was mentioned Abigail will be on season 2 of When Hope Calls, or at least some of it. So that's another reason why.
Yeah, I don't think that's been confirmed. I think a lot of people are
wrong.
Yeah, it hasn't been confirmed yet, but it's possible.
It would be cool to see.
Yeah.
Elizabeth wants Henry to talk to her students about the fight that he had at the saloon. She'd like to impress upon them that fighting, or as Henry says, slugging it out, is not the best way to solve your problems. Henry doesn't think he's the right person to teach anyone about being a peacemaker. Elizabeth says that she can think of one person in particular who would beg to differ. And I wrote in my notes, Abigail, question mark.
Of course it's Abigail.
Of course it's Abigail. Yeah.
She always sees the good in everyone.
Yes. The election results. I love how as Lee and Bill are, walking closer to the mercantile,
right.
They both say at the same time, may the best man win.
I mean, at that moment when they're showing so much of like Lee and Bill together, you kind of know where it's gonna go at that point. I think it's kind of like key there that there is there's another person in the running that you can't forget about.
Yeah.
Who seems to be absent in this scene.
Yeah. We see Minnie tell Joseph that they need to discuss Cooper not wanting to attend church. And then Lucas walks up to Elizabeth. He says, I hope we're not in for another recount.
Right? I know. And he remembers that recount too, very well.
Yep. Hickam is the new mayor. What?
I know. We all thought it was going to be Lee.
I thought for sure it was going to be Lee. I mean, I think Hickam will be a great mayor, but I thought for sure it was going to be Lee.
I did too, just because, I mean, Lee has just been, he's been fighting to figure out, where he belongs. Kind of, he wants to find something for him. And I mean, honestly, Lee's my favorite. I love Lee. So, of course I wanted him to be mayor. But at the same time, I mean, Hickam's kind of been a background character for so long. And, Ben's been on the show for a very long time.
Season 1, I think.
Almost since the beginning. I don't remember if he was in season 1 or not, but he's definitely been on for quite a long time. Maybe season 1. I can't remember. I think season 2, maybe.
I think he was in the background putting up a sign or something in front of the mercantile in one of the last episodes in season 1. I can't remember which one. I would have to go back and watch, but
right. Yeah. I can't remember, but I know that nobody really knew who he was until at least season 2.
Season 2.
And so, yeah, I mean, he's been there for a long time. So I do think it's about time that he got, some more screen time, and that he got he's in charge of something big in the town. He's going to be a very integral part of the story. And so, I mean, I think definitely it'll be really good for Hickam, but at the same time, I definitely was hoping it would be Lee.
Yeah.
But and I'm a little surprised. I mean, good for Hickam. Good for Hickam, but I'm surprised that he got so many votes. Yeah. Because Hickam, we haven't seen a lot of him, doing stuff in the town. So, good for Hickam. Great for him.
Yeah. I loved Lee and Bill's reaction. I think Lee said something like, huh?
I know.
What? And then Fiona's reaction was priceless. She was like,
he was the only one who was I know, she was the only one too. I felt kind of bad. Good thing he wasn't there. Because it would have only been Fiona clapping for him,
I know everyone was like, oh.
Poor Hickam. I mean, good thing he wasn't there. Good. I'm glad he wasn't.
Yeah. And then Fiona says, I mean, way to go, Mike.
Yeah.
Trying to back that up a little bit. Back up her
okay. Yeah. That was funny. I know, but I do remember thinking, where is Mike? Where,
I know, yeah.
Where is he? Why isn't he here?
Yeah, speaking of that, Bill's line before it cuts to the next scene, he says, already a lame duck. I don't know if you heard that.
I did. It's typical Bill too. He really knows what to say, and it's not always the best thing to say.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, Bill.
Jack Wagner has some of the best lines on the show. No joke.
He plays it so well too.
Oh.
Love it.
Hickam talking to Lee and Bill in the saloon. So this is, when he finally comes back to town from whatever he was doing, which we find out in a little bit. Lee and Bill's facial expressions in this moment are just priceless. They're just sitting there with like the blankest look on their face, like, what just happened?
I know that they're still in disbelief. They just like they can't believe that
Nope.
just happened.
Hickam even says that he can't believe he won.
I know.
He came by to say congratulations on a hard-fought campaign, and he hopes that they can get past any ill will between them and that they can get down to the serious business of this town's future. Then he pauses for a second and he says, okay, well, there's work to be done. And then he walks out as he's saying again, I can't believe I won. Woo-hoo!
I know, he's like yelling and jumping up and down, like, yeah, like I love how he starts, like, he leaves and he says, yes, let's get back to the serious business. And all of a sudden, it's just back to, him like a little kid on Christmas. He's so excited. And I just thought it was funny because it kind of mirrored what Fiona's reaction.
Yeah.
She found out he won. I thought that was funny. I was like, this is the mayor of Hope Valley.
Yeah. The way Lee and Bill just throw their cards down on the table after he left was hilarious. They're just like, I give up. Like, whatever.
Right.
Minnie and Joseph's second conversation in the cafe. He doesn't understand why Cooper wouldn't come to him. Minnie says that he never wants to disappoint his father. She also says that when he was asked to be the pastor of Hope Valley, they agreed that it is the family's calling, not only his. Minnie told Cooper that they discussed attending Sunday service with the rest of them, at a later time. She says that Cooper is growing up, questioning, and believes that's why he's acting out. Not everyone is as strong in their faith. Minnie says that she has her own questions, her own fears, and that the same goes for Cooper. Joseph wants to know what everyone will think of him being up at the pulpit and his own son not even attending service. Minnie says that's not anyone's concern. That will be between Cooper and God. I thought that was a great scene between them.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely a hard situation to be in. I mean, it's definitely hard, especially when, people are questioning their faith and they're not, really sure where they're at. Especially, I mean, Cooper's so young. I mean, you definitely have to, find it for yourself, and you have to prove it for yourself, and nobody can, tell you what to believe in it. So, I mean, I definitely feel for them in that scene, but I definitely appreciate, where Joseph is at with it too.
Yeah, me too. Elizabeth runs into Lucas outside the ice cream shop, and he's holding a cup of ice cream in his hand, and she says, is that for me? And he tells her that it's for Nathan. And, she says that was very nice of him, which I agree. That was very nice.
I was very surprised to see that Lucas was going to bring him ice cream. I was like, wow, all right.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Elizabeth meets Maysu, and she tells her that she saw her with Newton. She didn't want to interrupt, so she left without saying anything. Maysu says accidents can lead to trauma in animals the same as with people. I only needed to show Newton that I understood. I wonder if this line has a deeper meaning.
It does. I mean, it has to. I mean, see, that there makes me think, something traumatic or something must have happened to May. And I'm very curious to know what that is.
Mm-hmm. I wonder if Jeffrey did something that caused her trauma.
Maybe it's possible. I mean, I'm wondering, this may not go anywhere, but I'm wondering if maybe she was married, and maybe it wasn't to Jeffrey. Maybe she had, a loss or something. I don't know. I'm just speculating it, but that just made me think like something traumatic
Yeah.
must have happened to her.
Elizabeth thanks her and says if she understands people the way she does animals, she's sure she'll be making friends here in no time. Lucas comes in to get a spoon for the ice cream, and then Elizabeth watches as he walks out. And, there's a little bit of awkward silence. And
well, yeah, because she's just looking at her man. That's what she's doing.
Yeah. May says, handsome. And Elizabeth says, yes, he is. Very.
Oh my.
Oh my gosh.
Oh May. Oh my.
Lucas and Nathan in the infirmary. What were your thoughts on this scene?
I have mixed emotions about this scene. I mean, I can see it from both angles. I can see both sides. But I mean, I feel like Nathan's still hurting from everything that happened last season, and I feel like he doesn't quite know where he stands. I mean, things are still really awkward between him and Lucas, and still awkward with Elizabeth too. I mean, obviously, they're getting to a point where they can be friends, and it's like, which is good. But I mean, if I was him, I would be really surprised that Lucas was bringing me ice cream. I mean, that would throw me for a little bit of a loop, and I think I would be wondering why. I would just be like, is this like a guilt thing? Like, or do you feel bad about what happened? So like I totally understand like where Nathan is coming from and asking that question. But at the same time, like I'm just like the scene is I don't really know how I feel about the scene. It's interesting. It's definitely interesting. And I don't know. It's kind of confusing, but like I definitely get like where they're coming from, and I just think it just goes to show that there's still stuff going on, and I appreciate that Lucas is trying to be nice, and he's trying to extend his hand of friendship, even if they're not necessarily friends at this point. But I do think I see he was doing that, but I definitely also think too that it's just a very interesting thing, and I feel like it's a very vulnerable question that Nathan asked, and I feel like it definitely probably put Lucas in a little bit of an awkward situation. I think they're kind of both in an awkward situation at that point. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't my favorite scene, but I liked it okay, and I believe that at some point they will become friends. So
yeah. I hope so. I mean, I hope that they'll be able to become friends. I mean, look at Rosemary and Elizabeth now. They're like the best of friends. And so it would be really fun to see Lucas and Nathan become really good friends. Like, I think that would be really nice. Once again, we're also back to, Nathan teasing in this scene too with the ice cream and how he keeps asking for, which was also very uncharacteristic of Nathan, which I was kind of like, okay, that was a little bit weird. But
yeah, he was like, Lucas.
Yeah, I know. I was like, okay, buddy.
Yeah, he was like 2 scoops this time and in a cone.
Yeah. I mean, he's trying to, once again, that was a very Kevin thing. I have a hard time believing that Nathan would actually say that, It's like, that's not the Nathan I know. I mean, of course, he's hurt too, so maybe he's just not thinking, who knows. And he's just trying to make the situation funny, but I was like, okay, Nathan, okay, he gets it. He gets it. And I love Nathan, but that's just me. Like, I am being a little bit picky about that scene. It is a little interesting.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I agree. Henry's conversation with Fiona tells him that when it comes to the mine, Jerome doesn't blame him for what happened. She said she should have waited to hear what he had to say about the matter. Instead, she headed for San Francisco. She saw the opportunity to put together a big business deal and lost sight of everyone else. And then she apologizes. Henry accepts her apology, thanks her for telling him, and says that we can't lose sight of the people involved in this.
First of all, I'm curious what led Fiona to get to that point where she got, where she lost sight. I mean, maybe because, she just was like, she's relatively new to the oil business, so maybe she really wants to like prove herself. But like, I feel like we haven't really seen, we didn't really see like her process of getting to that point. So I just think it's interesting how they like throwing us into this season where automatically like Fiona did this big thing. I want to know like what led to her, making that decision to do that? How did she find out about this? It's very interesting. And definitely very uncharacteristic of Fiona too, which is interesting. But I do appreciate that she was brave enough and strong enough to admit that she, her fault in that lost sight of what was important. So I appreciated that too. And I appreciated Henry saying, we need to remember who's involved in this.
Mm-hmm. Lucas stops at Elizabeth's with ice cream for little Jack, and he brings her one as well, which I thought that was really cute.
Well, I like how he said little Jack first, and she was like, okay, but she looked a little disappointed there.
Yeah.
She's like, what about me?
Yeah. Lee arrives home a few seconds later, and Elizabeth sees the sad look on his face, after losing the election, and she apologizes. Lucas says that he voted for Bill. Elizabeth says that she voted for Lee. Lucas thinks that Lee and Bill split the vote, and that's how Hickam became mayor.
I was like, really? Come on. I was like, seriously? You guys didn't talk about this before? I was like, oh man. Good for Hickam. Good for Hickam.
Yeah. He'll be a good mayor, but still surprised that it wasn't Lee.
Yeah. I'm still feeling for Lee. I have a soft spot for Lee, so I'm still feeling for him.
Yeah. This next scene between Lee and Rosemary is a favorite in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
Lee wants to know why everyone keeps apologizing to him. Rosemary says it's because becoming mayor was important to him. Lee felt like he had found his purpose. Rosemary says that it still might be his purpose and that he could run again. Lee says, nah, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
Which is sad.
I know. I feel like, Lee, like we've been saying, Lee is, he's struggling to find purpose. And so now I feel like just the fact that he didn't win is just like, it's making him feel like even worse about himself.
Yeah.
I feel so bad for him. Like,
I do. They start talking about his speech, and Lee gives her the piece of paper with his speech written down. And, she reads the last line or paragraph. It says, "Finally, I'd like to thank my wife, Rosemary, who has helped me to be better, do more, dream bigger, and best of all, to never give up."
So sweet.
One of my favorite lines in the episode.
Oh, I love how supportive they are of each other.
Yeah. They're my favorite.
I know, they are. They're my favorite too. Through thick and through thin, since season 2, they've been my favorite. I love them so much.
Elizabeth's students made Nathan get well soon cards. This is when they're in the classroom and they're giving the cards to Elizabeth to take to Nathan. I love the comment after she gets all the cards that the student has made, and she says something about getting back to long division, and they're just all like, oh,
no more math. I don't blame them.
I don't either. Henry walks in to speak to the class. He says, "I'm not very good at long division. I'm afraid I can't help." And then he walks up to the front where Elizabeth is, and I don't have the next line written down, but Henry then, starts giving advice to the class, and he says, "Don't fight." And then Elizabeth says something like, "Do you have anything else to add?"
I know. I love how I love how that's like his one little nugget of wisdom. He's like, don't fight. Like, because he doesn't know what he's doing. He's like, Elizabeth, why am I even here? Like, okay, props to the guy for actually coming and for trying. Good for him for actually coming at least. But I was like, really, Henry, that's all you have to say. Come on, buddy. Come on.
And then he says, "Listen to your teacher." And then Elizabeth says, "Do you have anything else to add?"
Yeah. Right.
And then this next line from Henry is another great one from the episode. He says, if we hurt one another, we all just end up in pain.
Mhm. Which is so true. And I love how that affected Cooper because moments before that, he like yelled and he was like, you do it. Like, I can't
Yeah.
remember what he said, but he was like very much for the fighting. And as soon as he said that, you could just see Cooper's face change. He's like, oh, yeah, you're right.
Yeah. Lucas and Jerome have a conversation in the saloon. Lucas tells Jerome if his investors decide to buy him out, they will have to contend with Henry. Jerome doesn't recommend that. Lucas says Henry made the company and it would be ill-advised not to retain it. The tenure with Pacific Northwest Mining Company was a long time ago, and Jerome says that Henry is still the same man he knew back then. I would tend to disagree with Jerome on that. Henry has changed a lot.
He has. I mean, Jerome hasn't been around. How would he know? He doesn't know anything.
Yeah.
He just sees the side of Henry that's not the best, but obviously Henry has a reason for being that way. Yeah, no, like definitely not. I don't agree.
Lucas tells Jerome to do what's right by reaching out to Henry. Then it cuts to the next scene. Bill and Maysue's conversation in the stables. I loved the scene too. Just the dynamic between them was great.
Yeah.
May says that Newton looks better already. And Bill says something, I don't have the line written down, but I think he mentions that she's done a good job. She says that she can be better at communicating with animals than people. She's a bit headstrong and plain spoken, and that hasn't always served her well. She wants Bill's help on a legal matter since she knows he's an attorney and a judge. Bill wants to know if she's in trouble. She says she doesn't think so, at least not yet. I wrote, what is going on with May that she would need an attorney?
Right. Again, and the plot thickens. Like stuff just keeps coming up with her. Like, what is going on? Like, that's what I want to know. Like, what is going on?
Yeah.
Oh, May.
Oh, I can't wait to find out.
I know. I just hope that it turns out all right. I'm sure it will, but I hope that it's all okay.
Yeah.
No more drama. Don't need any more drama. No, thank you.
Fiona and Hickam in the barber shop. He wasn't there when they announced him as mayor because he was helping round up cows that had gotten loose.
That's a nice thing for a mayor to do.
Yes.
Good for him.
Yeah. He was also trying to avoid Henry. Hickam doesn't want there to be any conflict of interest, so he's decided to step down from running Gowan Petroleum and sell all his shares in the company, which he wants to give to Fiona. He says that the company needs her for the exact reason she went to see Henry.
See, as soon as I hear that, though, I just automatically think, okay, so everybody's leaving the company, except for now it's just Fiona and Henry. And like, as soon as I heard that, I was like, oh my goodness, like this is getting interesting. Like, ooh, Fiona is going to have quite a situation to deal with. I mean, she can do it.
Yeah, Lee and Rosemary in their office again. Rosemary wants Lee to consider becoming the managing editor of the Valley Voice. She says she's been swamped because she still doesn't have a staff. I wrote in my notes, I'll come help you, Rosemary, because in high school I was on the yearbook staff as editor. So I was like, I'll come help. I actually tweeted that on Sunday night and Brian retweeted it.
Oh, nice.
And Pascal retweeted it too.
Oh, nice. That's cool.
Yeah. Rosemary explaining what the managing editor does. I thought this line was really cute. She says, he supervises the day-to-day operations of the publication. And the best part, he reports to the editor-in-chief. I love the look on Lee's face. He's like, I like the sound of that.
Yep.
In a way, I kind of saw a little bit of the old Rosemary back.
Yeah.
Like, not in a bad way, but
no, of course not. No. Yeah.
Which I loved, you know.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Who doesn't love, Rosemary's extravagance?
Yeah. Extravagant gestures, but you're cute.
Yes, love it.
Lee accepts the offer. And there we have it. He is the managing editor of the Valley Voice.
Yeah. I'm interested to see where that goes because we know later on that they're going to have some issues.
Yeah, that one sneak peek we got before the premiere.
It looks like, that's going to, test their marriage a little bit, but I think it'll be good for them to be able to work that out.
Yeah. Henry and Jerome's conversation at the oil derrick. Jerome apologizes to Henry about how his warnings went unheeded regarding the mine disaster. It was his reason for departing from the Pacific Northwest Mining Company, and it was always profit first, I think was the next thing that Jerome said.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Jerome says oil is the future of the country and tells Henry if his investors come in, he'll regret not being part of things. Henry says he'll consider it. And then, he walks off and it cuts to the next scene of Henry and Jerome saying goodbye at the stagecoach. And then Elizabeth sees the exchange. Henry walks over to her and says something about how, not one punch was thrown. And we get the line from Henry, it would seem that I can't quite outrun my past. And he wants to see what he can do to fix it.
Yeah, good for him. Good for him.
Yeah. My next thought, why is Fiona getting on the stagecoach with Jerome? And why doesn't she know where she's going?
I know. I was so confused and thrown off guard by that. Like, what? Like, girl, where are you going? Like, what? I was so confused by that. I'm
like what?
What? Where is she going? And why so suddenly? Just like all of a sudden, no, I'm getting on the stagecoach. Okay.
Bye.
I know. Like
Ned and May's conversation. He feels that they have been misled. Her intention wasn't to mislead anyone. Everything about what she said, except for posing as her husband, is the truth. And she says, would you have hired me if you'd known I was a woman? What do you think? Do you think Ned would have hired her if he knew?
I mean, I feel like Ned's a pretty reasonable guy.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah.
I mean, I think maybe he would have considered, I mean, maybe not. I mean, for a pharmacy job, I don't know. But I mean, I don't think it would be out of the question. I don't think he wouldn't at least consider it. I think Ned's pretty reasonable.
Yeah, I agree. Elizabeth in the infirmary with Nathan and giving him the cards and the paper hearts from her students.
That was cute. The paper heart with the horse, how it's like half horse, half heart. That was so cute.
Elizabeth informs Nathan that Sue has been taking care of Newton and that he wouldn't let her near him. Nathan says he's always been a good judge of character.
Oh boy. He's just lesson learned, Nathan does not need to be her anymore because he's just
there was some shade thrown at Elizabeth.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely.
And then she says,
is this how it's gonna be between us from now on?
Yeah. He says, well, probably for a little while anyway.
I mean, I think that's the only way. Nathan's still hurting. I think that's in some way that's his way of, trying to help the situation. For him, he feels like he can, kind of be playful a little bit,
Yeah. Lucas stops by to give Nathan a letter from Allie and his hat that is squished.
I was curious why it was Lucas who did that.
I don't know.
That was kind of weird. I was like, why didn't Bill do it?
I don't know.
Yeah, that was interesting.
The next conversation with Lee and Rosemary in their office. Rosemary thinks that they need another window. Lee thinks they need to modernize. Rosemary says he's standing in front of what will become her window. And then Lee trying to answer the ringing phone and introducing himself as the managing editor.
Right. With the 3 different phones. That was funny. I was like, why do you guys need 3 phones?
Yeah.
It's a little excessive. It's a little bit excessive.
Yeah.
Maybe I understand 2. They each have 1, but 3.
Yeah. He was like, Lee Coulter, managing editor of the Valley Voice. Lee Coulter, managing editor of the Valley Voice.
Yeah. He's feeling good about it, though. That's good. At least he's happy about something, At least he's feeling good about something right now.
Yeah.
He's distracting himself. That's good.
Everyone walking to church, service, and Joseph's sermon. Minnie fully supports Joseph, but isn't convinced, as he is about wanting Cooper to attend church service. She thinks Cooper may need to come to an understanding on his own. We see Angela riding the bike with Robert. She says, it feels like I'm flying.
Yeah. And Robert says it's not the same as a horse or something like that.
Joseph says, right now I'm more worried about Angela and that boy than I am with Cooper. And I don't think he's talking about the bicycle. I think he's talking about relationship.
Right.
Lee says something about Jesse and Clara. I couldn't quite make out what he said, but
he was talking about the bike and how the bike was Jesse and Clara's, and he's glad that.
Okay. Yeah. I couldn't quite understand what he was saying. Then he goes on to tell Rosemary, you're so good with kids. You would have made a great mother. Rosemary says, and you a father. Okay. I'm more convinced than ever now that they're going to have a kid this season.
Right. They're making it appear as if, they're getting to the point where, they're accepting it. And a lot of times once you get to the point where you accept it, that's when it happens.
That was total foreshadowing.
Oh, yes. Yes, definitely.
Lee goes on to say, I'm just so happy that we have each other. That was a sweet line.
No, so sweet.
Lucas is attending church with Elizabeth and Jack. I loved seeing that. That was really sweet.
Yeah. It definitely surprised me that they actually talked about that and how, Lucas doesn't normally do that sort of thing.
Yeah. He says, it's time to spend with you and Jack. And Elizabeth says, and that is one big little moment. Joseph's sermon, that was another favorite moment from this episode and the season already so far.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't write the whole sermon down, but there's one particular line I really loved when Joseph says, it's important that we encourage one another, especially during the hard times, in times of change like those that lay ahead. Hope Valley won't stay the same forever. That's why we should enjoy and cherish it while we're able.
Mm-hmm. Very wise words.
Yeah.
Definitely. I thought it was funny too how he also asked Hickam if he had anything to add.
I was about to say that.
He had no idea what to say. He's just
he was like, what you said. And Joseph's like, amen.
I was like, Joseph, why would you ask Hickam if he had anything to add? Maybe he was just trying to, encourage him, say, oh, this is the new mayor. Maybe he wants to, engage him a little bit,
Oh, my goodness. It also broke my heart to see Henry starting to go into church, and then he just turns right back around.
I feel like we've said before, I feel there was another scene in another season where he's gonna go in and then he didn't. But we have seen him in church before. Henry has came in before.
Yeah.
I can't remember, but it has happened before.
I know he was there in the episode in season 3 when everything with Frank had happened and, they were about to send him away, but then the town voted to let him stay.
Mm-hmm.
So that preview for next week, what do you think?
Oh boy, it looks like Elizabeth is going to be getting quite a bit of surprise.
Uh-huh.
Lack of a better word I can't think of right now. But it looks like her book is going to be creating quite the stir and not necessarily the best stir.
Yeah.
And it looks like Nathan's going to be put in a little bit of an uncomfortable situation as well.
Yeah.
Oh boy. What do you think about this?
I'm excited to see it, but at the same time. I think it'll be interesting to see what everyone's reaction is to her book.
Yeah.
It's apparently flying off the shelves, according to Florence.
I mean, why wouldn't it be? They have an author in town, of course. Everyone's gonna want to read it. I want to read it.
I want to read it too.
Like, come
Like,
on, Hallmark. Let's make it a thing. Come on, let's make it a book.
Yes.
Let's go.
Can this be an actual thing?
Yes. Yes.
Ned asks Nathan if he's read Elizabeth's book, and he's like, no, I haven't. And we see Nathan looking out the window of the mercantile at, I believe, May Sue, who is in front of the infirmary.
Yes.
And Florence tells him not to be hasty since he's recently had his heart flouted. I actually looked this word up. Flouted means disregarded.
Right. Like, Florence, like, I appreciate that, like, she's trying to help, but, Florence sometimes doesn't always do things in the most gentle way. And I feel like you need to be gentle with this whole situation. So I definitely feel for him.
Yeah.
Especially if he's like, no, I do not have a
flouted heart. And he says he's not looking for a new courtship.
Right.
We also see May Sue ask Faith if the Mountie in the book is based on Nathan. Well, I mean, May Sue starts to ask, and then Faith finishes her sentence and says something like, based on Nathan, and then she kind of nods her head yes. This will be a good episode to see.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
Finally released.
It's finally out there. Yeah. I'm curious to see it.
All right, Hearties. I think that wraps up our recap of Season 9, Episode 2, Out Like a Lamb. We will be back next week to recap Season 9, Episode 3, Turn the Page. We hope you have a great day or night wherever you are in the world, and we will see you next time. Bye. We love y'all.
Bye, Hearties.